2:03. So I will go on and whatever that means. The meeting will come to order. The time is now 2:03 p.m. on Tuesday, June 21st, 2022. This is a special meeting of the Executive Committee of the District of Columbia Commission on the Arts and Humanities. My name is Reggie Van Lee, Chairperson of the Commission and Chair of the Committee. I'm wearing a blue suit with a light blue shirt. The purpose of this special meeting is a review and discussion of the Commission's FY 2022 Marketing and Communications Plan presented by Bayne LLC. There will be no other business considered at today's meeting. Notice this meeting was posted on the Commission's website, dcarts.dc.gov, and on the DC Office of Open Government's Central Meetings calendar. I will now call the roll. When you hear your name, please answer present. Rona.
Present.
Gretchen.
Present.
Hector.
Present.
Kimber. Maggie. Juanice. And myself present. So a quorum is present. This is a meeting of a public body held in open session in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. The meeting is being conducted remotely using the Cisco Webex virtual meeting platform and is being live streamed to the Commission's YouTube channel. An electronic recording of the meeting will be available for viewing online following the conclusion of the meeting. I'll now read the land acknowledgement. Every community owes its existence and vitality to generations from around the world who contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy to making the history that led to this moment. Some were brought here against their will, some were drawn to leave their distant homes in hope of a better life, and some have lived on this land for more generations than can be counted. Truth and acknowledgement are critical in building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. We begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We stand on the ancestral lands of the CAH and Piscataway people. We pay respects to the elders past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events and to use such truths to guide the legacy of this Arts Commission. Once again, the purpose of today's meeting is a review and discussion of the Commission's FY 2022 Marketing and Communications Plan presented by Bayne LLC. I'd like to invite Anthony Hills, President of Bayne LLC, to walk us through the Marketing and Communications Plan his firm has put together. Please hold questions and comments until the end so that we get through the entire plan. Anthony.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the Executive Committee for inviting us here tonight. And again, thank you for selecting us to work with you for the FY 22 Marketing and Communications project. So I will, if I can share my screen, I will share it. It may be easiest way to do it. Here we go. And we can just work through here. Again, as some of these, there are some things where the dates based on just some of this may have to change going forward, but generally the plan encompasses the same as of for now. You know, we may make edits based on the feedback received in the meeting today or things noted by the committee. So essentially, just to start, right, the overview of the plan basically is there's three fundamental things. One, to promote key programs and grants and initiatives that the commission has ongoing or is offering, to basically elevate the visibility of the commission, the grantees in this project, to increase the percentage of applicants from underserved communities, and to highlight ongoing activities as that were suggested by the task force, to improve equity and inclusion in the CAH grant making process, and to also help the agency, when the commission build out its footprint, particularly on social media, increase its social media presence. And I'll spare the background section. You could read that. I'll send this out in the PDF version later. Just gives a background of how we came to this point in solicitation. So the concept, our major portion, that the major concept we have perceived this approach we're calling the artist table. And so the concept of the artist table is to build upon the commission's efforts previously and that are ongoing by elevating two things. One to highlight just the diversity of the types of grantees that the commission has awarded grants to, and then just the diversity of the what is art in the greater conversation. So two things. We want to kind of use these artists, 5 artists that are current CAH grantees, and highlight their work and tell their story, to kind of say, hey, here is the impact that the commission has made directly. You can hear from the grantees, not necessarily from us, but these are people who represent the diversity and richness of the district's art scene and kind of tell their story through pictures as well as interviews. And part of that is, and also the greater conversation of, and we discussed this a little bit last week during, well, 2 weeks ago during media training, is the conversation of what exactly is art. Because art is such a broad term, and depending on where you find where you stand at, the pendulum, the way you define art can be vastly different from the way that others define art. And I've given the example of hairstylists, whereas in some people may consider a hairstylist art, some people in the traditional sense don't consider that art. There's certain types of music. So we want to be able to sort of bring that conversation through the forefront through this promotional campaign we're going to do. So part of it is also interviewing key members of the commission, interviewing staff, as well as these 5 grantees we're going to select. So it'll be a competitive process where there's an application and they'll submit, answer some questions of, why should they be at the artist table, get some information about their background and get a better understanding of them. And from those, we have our rubric, internal rubric, and we'll select 5 for approval. And once selected 5, we'll invite those in, we'll talk to them, interview them, get their story, do a photo shoot. They'll get a stipend for participating, and they will be used as part of the artist table campaign. And some of that campaign will use those snippets. There'll be videos that can be shared social media, maybe local TV, as well as we plan to use in particular bus ads, and we want to actually take the time to like visualize and put these on buses or billboards around the city so that people are able to see and get an impact and understand some of the visibility of the commission. So I know that traditionally we've done advertising to kind of just promote, let's say, a grant application or apply for this grant. We want to take some time to actually use this to promote the impact, just to kind of tell the story of the commission and help build upon the efforts that are currently going. And so this is the concept called the artist table. One thing we also are planning to do is an exhibition at the actual CHA gallery, at the CAH gallery. And we're working to just kind of identify timelines. And one of the things we think will actually be really good there, we plan to do is an opening reception. We will need just some guidance from the commission on kind of who should be involved there. But one is that's also a chance for the commission to bring in some key community partners and say, hey, here's what we've been working on. We know some of the things that we said. Here's what we find it. We know the stories have been in the press. Here's what we've done. So as well as you get to show some of the work and highlight some of the grantees, it's also a way to welcome in and create some key partnerships with key constituents in the district. Another thing we're currently doing outside of that is we're also doing, each month we're highlighting different grantees. So currently right now, for the month of June, it's been a focus on Pride Month, and we are highlighting DuPont's Undergrounds. They did a series of events related to Pride Month, that, we're highlighting some of that effort. So right now we have social media ads on Facebook and Instagram that's focused particularly in the district, just kind of highlighting the work of DuPont Underground. And each month we'll select 1 to 2 current grantees, reach out to them, get some information, and just highlight that either a project, either it could be their project that was actually funded by a commission grant, or it's a grantee that's doing other work, and just talk about how the commission's investment into their organization has helped them survive. And DuPont Underground, there were a lot of things where they talked about how the commission was able to help them during COVID-19, right? The funding helped them, stay afloat and keep certain things going. So kind of tell the story, the impact through these little snippets that go out each month. So some months they may be reels, some months they may just be posts we boost, as well as, sometimes it may just be some video clips. We may just get someone to actually talk, just give a 30-second spiel of why the work of the commission is so important, and boost that and highlight that to make sure that people in the community are seeing that as well. And we can also talk about, well, I said today, we're not just on social. I want to also understand that we have been doing also local press. We ran advertisements in Hillrat, east of the river, in Mid City. We've also run ads on WKYS, LTM, Elzo, KYS, WPGC. We will be running some additional ads in El Tiempo, the newspaper, as well as the Informer. Those will also, in the next couple of months, we'll be putting ads in those. And we're also currently vetting other local news outlets to work to get a hyper-local focus, to get just commission ads, whether it's some of them are promoting the grant. I think the ones right now have been promoting the recovery grant, the relief and recovery grant, as well as the fellowship. I know the fellowship closed on Friday, and the relief and recovery grant, I think, goes into July the 8th. So those are the two. Well, currently the relief and recovery grant is what we're promoting, but as different things roll around, we will update those ads. And some of it may just be to just promote the commission overall. It may not promote a necessary particular grant, just say, hey, we're here, this is what we do, this is kind of our impact. So also storytelling and reinvesting sort of those community resources to build key partners. One of the other things we're doing is just with the media relations aspect. This is something we're hoping to gear up more of now that the primary election is over today as of 10 p.m. And there'll be more air available for us to reach into. So we are right now, I think I mentioned before, we are working with Radio One to trying to finalize some times that's available to book that. But we're also looking at just local outlets. One of the things that we are thinking as a strategy is also inviting members of the press in. So, again, that's something we would need dates from, and to just have like a desk side chat, to really talk and just to kind of explain what's going on. Because some of the pushback we have received from the news outlets is we'll send a press release about a grant. They may mention it like, hey, this is what's open, but byline, but they're not following up and asking for an interview. And some of it is we want to be able to get the interviews, get point, so that the commission can actually tell its story and get some of its words in print, its words out there. So that's where one of the things we're working on now that this election is over, is how to pivot and to create more space. I know we spoke about doing a national news story. I know there was some thoughts that would need to wait till later into the contract, maybe in the fall. But it's something we start brainstorming on what exactly outlet and what that looks like. So that has to be fleshed out. We have not fleshed that part out yet, but that is something that we do have on our radar that we want to accomplish. Right now, the biggest thing is kind of drive some more local interest, and also just hyper focusing on some of the smaller outlets that traditionally get left out. So some of the, maybe like a Congress Heights on the Rise type of blog, We just talk, hey, this is some of the things we got going on. Here's what we're doing. So that's what we're kind of building out now. And then again, we can do op-eds, letters to the editor. You'll have this, so you can just, there's just different things that we can actually tell. It's just really angling for a story. And each week, what we are doing now, each week, during our bi-weekly check-in, every other week, we're just like asking, hey, what's going on? What can we get some press out about? And what would you like for us to push? And then we'll go out and push it the same way we're doing with the grantees. Like, hey, if they're a grantee we want to spotlight this month, we'll reach out to them, get some quotes from them, get a better understanding of what they're doing, and we're creating some text and send it back to the agency for approval. Once approved, go on social media, put some money behind it, and that way it's seen by the masses. Again, this is the media by schedule. Again, some of these dates have changed. But we can go through here. It's kind of, some of these things have changed. Some of these are already passed. Again, right now, I said this month we're in Hill City. We're on Elzo, PGC, Hill City, Mid City, River. All of those are up. The July will be filled out more because there's some more stuff we'll move there. August, we're going to hopefully the ads will be able to go up for WMATA. And again, if there's some changes, some additionals, as far as the media buy, these things, this is a little more fluid because as different opportunities approach or something, if the commission has needs to promote an event, we've also left some of the, particularly with the media buy, we've left some of the budget right now kind of unaccounted for just based on kind of needs. Like, hey, if the commission decides there's a summer series it's going to do, and we would like to get some ads out about this, that allows us to, hey, get some creative and push it out there. So that part, is a little fluid. And again, the staff, I think everyone, some of y'all have met me. I'm Anthony Hales, the project manager. We have not met. We have Andrew Lee on that team who is handling the media relations. Dr. Andreen Taylor, she's the creative director. And then Ms. Umara Magni, she oversees the content strategy and social media. That's the core team. We do have Kiara Pass on with us as well. She is the project coordinator, so she tries to make sure that all the trains stay running. And here's just a little bit of the timeline. We're into June at this point now. But we'll say some of this has to change because the artist table application was originally going to close on Friday. Again, at this point, that would need to change. We would probably, this entire back half of the schedule probably has to slide 2 weeks at this point. Because we do want them to at least have 2 weeks to apply for the grant. We do want to at least have another week and a half to go through the grants. Go through the applications. Yes, apply for the project and then go through the application and select and send over for approval. And then from there, we'll have production time to come in and do interviews with the artist table selected representatives as well as key CAH staff, members of the board that we want to interview just for the highlight videos we're going to do for the visual storytelling. And again, some of this is the grantees, the flyers. Most of those have already been done. The videos will be in August. We're doing the promotional posts as they come up. Oh, another thing we will also do visuals and templates for all the grant winners so that they're able to announce themselves. So we're also going to ask them when grants are awarded, people to promote, and we will give them, templates, hashtags, and ways to promote themselves. So that way the commission can also follow up and try to highlight the work that they're doing. One of the things that we didn't originally put in the plan, we have discussed since that we may also want to visit is engagement with local officials. So I'm thinking in particular civic associations and ANC meetings. I do know the chairman. I know that you did a couple of meetings last year that we were able to find some highlights up from. And it may be a good idea to do like a reintroduction to the community. that, is kind of based on availability and interest. Again, it's not one that we actually originally put in the plan, but it's something we can work in if there is an interest there amongst the board, the commission, to see that type of work implemented. And that kind of wraps up everything that I initially drafted the plan. So feel free to have any questions, concerns, or things you want to see edited, changed, etc.
Good. Well, thank you very much. I have a bunch of questions, but if my colleagues have some first, I can let them go. And hopefully they'll ask my questions. We'll get them answered. But does anybody want to go first?
I have a question or two.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Rona Friedman, one of the commissioners, and I'm wearing a blue and white shirt and I have blonde hair. You said that you're going to have 5 different artists around this. I call it artists of the round table. So around your table, how often does this change? And have you sent all the communications to all our grantees, those successful and not, so they know that this exists? That's number 1. And number 2, are you working on our website or putting this on our website in some manner? Because that to me is critical. So those are the 2 major questions, is how are you going to get the communications out, basically, other than news? How are you going to get it to individual organizations and artists?
So yeah, so one, the application hasn't launched yet. We just discussed it last week. We thought per this conversation, we want to make sure that the board, the committee was okay with it before we proceeded. So it has not launched yet. The application is ready. And as soon as it's ready, we do have emails geared up to go to the list of grantees, that all the existing grantees for FY22. We do have language geared up for the website and all the social media channels. And I'm not sure if we have cell phone numbers or text. We're able to send text messages out. I'm just not sure if we have numbers or not. That's something I may have to follow up. But if we do have numbers, we can also send them a text message and ask them to sign up. And as far as the changing, no, once there will be 5 artists who we select, they will be highlighted for the duration of the program. So the grantee spotlights, that changes each month. So like DuPont Underground is this month. For July, there will be a different grantee highlighted. But for the artist table, these are actual individuals. So I guess I want to curate that. The grantee spotlight can be either an individual who is affiliated with an organization where they work for them or work with an organization that received the CAH grant, or it could be the actual organization itself. For the actual artist table, it has to be an artist. They can be an independent artist, or they work for an organization, but we're actually highlighting the individual for the artist table. We're telling their story.
So it's just 5 people. Who picks these 5?
So we have a rubric we're using. So for our team, we'll go through and make our initial selections, and we'll rank our top 5 and give some alternatives, and we will ultimately send to the commission for approval. But it was our suggestion that in order to avoid the appearance of favoritism, that the commission not be involved in the initial selection process.
And are you going to make the rubric public so people know what they have to do to compete?
Yes. Yes. And on the application, it gives kind of what people are judged on and the qualifications. One of the things we did actually require, we came back to require was actual being a resident, because we recognize that there may be a CH grantee who is based in the district and has the person that applies, could not live in the district. So we did put that qualification. I think one of the things we did, we have excellent application. We're not quite sure how we're going to use it in the preference, but we will figure it out before it launches, is if someone is a native born Washingtonian. Or we call it native Washingtonian, either born or raised in the District of Columbia. And yeah,
I'm sorry.
I know the raise can be subjective, but we have to trust people to be honest in some capacity.
Does that satisfy you, Rona? Those answers?
Yeah, right now
Good,
that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I have a long list, but
Hi, it's Gretchen.
Hector had his head up.
I'm
But
sorry,
Gretchen? Okay, Hector, please.
Okay, yes, please. Number one, on the rubric, I'm a little bit concerned about that. Obviously, we have a standard of our own as a commission in the selection process. Has that process been consulted with or dealt with so that it meets some of the IDEA requirements that we have? Number one, in reading your program, which by the way, I want to say compliment you, it's very extensive, really comprehensive. I just think that, obviously getting into the details, which is not necessarily the purpose of this meeting, but just thought there was nothing there that brought up the issue of multilingualism. The fact that although you have El Zol, which I assume that's going to be in Spanish, but in general, the information that you're going to be sending out to the general public to reach out its optimal, members of the community. Multilingualism is very important. And not only that, but there is a Language Access Act in Washington, D.C. that's very important to keep in mind. The consideration of obviously one of the things that I did not read here in the report that you wrote or the program is interagency relationships or interagency partnerships, which I think are very, very key. One that comes to mind very quickly would be probably the Office of Film for the District of Columbia, DC Cable, for example, to be able to put out all this information that we have to the DC community. Those sort of like details in terms of the targeted partnerships that we feel. Because in many cases, sometimes other agencies in the District of Columbia don't really know what we do. So I think it's a very important thing to start working with these agencies and finding a way of creating some kind of synergy with whatever they can bring to the table. In particular, DC Cable has access, which is pretty large and significant for the District of Columbia. The local press also, obviously, one of the key things that I find is local press is interested in local issues and local people. Some of the issues of bringing in members of the table, which I understand the members of the table are going to stay pretty well during the whole year, but that doesn't give any more room to the table. You may, just as a thought, when you have a closed table, that means that nobody else can come into the table. And that in a way, I kind of have a point, I draw some different inferences from that. So I would like it to consider what can we do to make that table a little bit more open. And I realize that it's a lot of work to open it up like that. And I know you're doing the featured grantee, but there's going to be some opinion and some interviews that are part of your program that can be a little bit more broad. Not that I'm saying that they're not. So I don't know the full level of the context. I think, okay. In terms of creating, you mentioned about creating some storylines that could be used. Obviously, the storylines should also be translated into multiple languages so that multiple media sources can utilize them as well. I've got a few more other notes, but I think I don't want to take too much time. But I did study it in detail. Thank you.
So Anthony, you want to respond to that? To those?
Yes. So I will take notes on the and just acknowledge the language access on translation. Because we have not thought of translation outside Spanish, but we do have translation services available, so we can take care of that in house. And I will note that the other I do as far as the artist table. And if I forget a point, just remind me. My apologies. As far as some of the local outlets in the artist table, I do want to note the artist table is a promotional campaign. they will not be part of, unless further need be part of the interviews. So part of the local press and local outreach is about getting people actually from the commission to go and talk about what the work the commission is actually doing and some of the programs the commission have going on. The people we're shooting, that is part of a promotional campaign. And again, those videos will be shared in online. Like, these are just 5 people we're highlighting, art and people we're highlighting, but it's not to say that only people we're working with. And we do have the grantee spotlights as well. Again, we can spruce those up, but I did want to kind of highlight that the stories we tell in the media relations and as far as pitching storylines, that's a little separate track. So for instance, we may ask the chairman, we may ask someone else from the commission, we may ask the director to go and sit with this community blog and talk about, the grants, upcoming grants for some of the programs that the commission has going on. And we can kind of go multiple directions with. As far as the production with that, the thing is, we got a short timeline to kind of get everything accomplished before November. So we will have to make a selection and closing just so we can able to produce the ads as far as they're concerned. Is speaking. No one said
Can I ask one question, Reggie, that I
Wait,
forgot?
let me make sure that
Of
Hector
course.
got, did you get all your questions answered, Hector?
No, it's one more. He did. I just forgot. The about the idea grants and the actual internal rubric. So we will review that. I make note of that. I did. That is something else mentioned that I forgot to mention the first time.
So Hector, did they?
Well, yes, somewhat. Because whatever you do or whatever you put out there is going to represent the commission and is going to talk for the commission. It's going to represent the commission. So in that sense, it is good that it works within what the commission already has built. So, I mean, those are some of the concerns. Obviously there's more, but I think that as time passes, and hopefully we'll get more updates on this, because this is really very important to the commission. It's a great first step. I see it. Obviously I hope that this could be something of a prolonged program, that we could do multi-year on that.
And then, and one more thing I did forget to mention that I want to address. Oh, it's interagency relationship. So we do.
Yeah.
We have worked with cable TV, films, movie, and entertainment. So we actually worked with the Creative Affairs office before. So we can definitely reach out to Director Gates and the team. We actually branded the Creative Affairs office. So we when they launched.
Good, so that's an open door then. So we should take it wide, because that gives us an awful lot of opportunity to be able to tell the story about what the commission does.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. So Gretchen was next, and then Urona. So Gretchen?
Sure.
Hi, first of all, thank you for the presentation. You've obviously put a lot of work into it. And I was listening very closely to what you just said in response to Hector's question, where you mentioned something about going out to community blogs. One of the things I found, even as recently as this past Saturday, was that there's still so many people that have not even heard of us. And these are community people. We do need to make sure that we touch the ANCs, that we touch the community organizations that are existing now. And I don't know if you have a list of those. I don't know how you're going to interface, I guess, with the city council distribution list. They probably have the widest distribution list of anybody, ward by ward. And I would certainly make sure that we put something in their monthly newsletters, because it will go to everybody in that particular ward. And they have thousands of people per ward. But let's just make sure that we do the community organizations, because it's so many people still, as I was reminded on this past Saturday, don't have access to the internet. So they're not going to be able to see a lot of the things that we post in a lot of places. So we've really got to take the second step to make sure that they are included. Thank you.
Any response, Anthony?
So definitely with the community organizations, I guess The only thing is I want to make sure that we are coordinating with the commission. I do know that the commission sends I guess on the internal mailing list reaches out to the ANC commissioners and the civic associations as well. So part is I don't want to make sure I want to make sure we're not duplicating to create confusion. So to the extent you want us to reach out, we will reach out. With city council, as far as the city council, I would need guidance on how you want us to approach that. I think that the commissioners and the ANC officials are, we can, as an extent, I think city council, we have to be a little more delicate so that we don't overstep or create issues, in particular in that space. So that we would actually just kind of need some feedback on the best way you would like us to approach that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for both city council and for the mayor's office, you should connect directly to me,
Okay,
and then I'll connect to the executive committee.
thank you.
Rona,
I forgot, this program you mentioned ends in November?
Yes.
Okay, 2 questions then. Are you gonna follow us through the rest of the year that make sure that your deliverables keep going and that they're successful? Or is it just a hard stop? That's number one. And then regard to what Hector said, I'm just having a hard problem wrapping my head around just 5 people. There are people with disabilities. There's so many different fields of artists. So not just artists and what they do, but different types of people in each field. And also not changing from now till November, just 5 people. That's just, it shows favoritism. I just can't help thinking that. It just does. And if I was looking on as a grantee, I'd say, why not this group? I mean, by 5, you're gonna leave out 25. That's my thought. And I just don't know how you're gonna pick the groups versus the artist versus someone who works for an organization versus someone who's in a different ethnic group, different population, disabilities I mean, there's just so much to consider, and I just feel that that hasn't been given enough thought of just 5 people at a small time and focusing on them.
so Anthony,
So yes, so I do get that we are capping the number. I do want to just clarify, we're not, we're, it's for individuals, so not necessarily the organizations. And we're looking at their individual attributes. When we're actually considering the artist, I would say the part of the thing is there's part of it is just production timeline. So we have a short amount of time to kind of get these things done. And the number, let's say even if we went to 6 or 7, and some people is going to get left out. I mean, I see it similar to like a grant, right? If you award a grant and you have 5 grantee selections and 20 people apply, that there at some point there is a cutoff because resources are not unlimited as far as the aspect. But we do see it as just the beginning of a process. So let's say if there's project 1 this year, there's 5 artists, and then next year there's 5 or maybe 10 artists. It doesn't have to be just a one-time thing. Just this initial one was we thought that was the number we could profile and give adequate time to actually go into their story and get production at a level that makes it worth their while to be involved with as well.
does that answer your question, Rona?
Yes, except with a grant, anyone can apply. It's not, and you mentioned before, it's an individual, which you then said can also belong to an organization. So what I'm saying is, I think of course, you're gonna leave someone out. And when we do our grant panels, of course, there are people who don't get grants because they don't meet the requirements or their scores aren't high enough. I just think this is so selective. It becomes, Bob, this whole, that number of 5 and how you're doing it. And for 5 months, you're doing 5 people. I don't know. I just think there has to be a better way to reach more of the community that we're trying to reach than just 5 people. So
I do have a question. Like, ideally, what do you think a number would be?
I don't have a number. It's the first time I'm really hearing and reading 5. It's just the way the program is structured. I think there needs to be a little bit of restructuring of this. You know, once you're calling it, artists of the round table, your artist table. And then the next thing you're saying, but only 5 can be featured. I find that it doesn't match up to me. It just doesn't. There's a dissonance there that I don't like. That's just my view of it.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. Quanice's hand was up, Andrene's hand was up, and Hector's was, but he took it down. So Hector, you're not up. Should I put you on the list? You good? You want, again,
Just briefly,
no. I'm just getting the order. So it's
oh, the order,
it's
okay.
Quanice, it's Quanice, it's Andrene, it's Hector, and now Gretchen. So Quanice,
Hi, Bayne people. It's good to see you. Finally excited to have, folks to help us with our marketing and communication strategy. So I'm really excited. I'm not sure if you all have been given, I know you got the 44 recommendations because I saw that in your proposal, but I'm not sure if you all have received something that I think is dear to the commission, which is our statement around anti-racism and liberation work that we're trying to do. And so I really want to make sure that accountability is a part of the outcomes that we're doing, but we're communicating those outcomes through the strategy that you have is what we're hoping for. Because through that statement, we really wanted to create some type of campaign to really talk about the things that we're trying to do with those 44 recommendations. And so I just want to make sure that you all actually received that and if there's been any conversations surrounding that.
We haven't had any discussions surrounding that. I don't want to say we have not received it. I will double check just before I put that on the record, and then if we don't have, our follow up and ask for a copy.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, because that kind of serves as a foundation, and then you can kind of see like where a lot of the commissioners are coming from with a lot of the work that we're trying to do with the communications plan. So I think it'll be helpful. And if you don't have it, then I can definitely send you a copy.
anything else, Quanice? Anything else, Quanice?
No, that's it for
Good,
me right
thanks.
now.
Andrene, I may not pronounce that right, but I tried.
Oh, that's fine, Andrene. Thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to address the issue about how many artists that we're going to select for the artist table and just give you a little bit of background of the inspiration for that, which is Judy Chicago's The Dinner Table. And if you're very or even a little familiar with that piece, it took Judy Chicago years to build out that piece, and she included many artists in order to help her to do that. And what she was doing was writing in women who have been left out in history. So that same concept is behind the artist table here. And along with the rallying cry of being more inclusive at the table, we understand that 5, it might sound like a small number, but in the amount of time that we have, it's a substantive number. And we're very well attuned to what the commission is doing and where the art world has gaps and how the commission is, forging a way in that conversation. So the artists that, we intend or we hope that will participate will reflect the diversity at multiple intersections of identities to propel the mission and the goal of what the commission is up to. I believe that the approach is very inclusive and that we have an application process that's going out to everyone, and it's open to everyone, all artists of all races, genders, abilities, linguistic backgrounds, and everyone has an opportunity to participate. And I think that creates what we know what the commission is up to is creating a more inclusive environment and expanding the conversation of who gets to be included at the table. So I do understand the concern, but as Anthony said, this is just the beginning. This process of creating a more inclusive art environment it's not going to be just done in this, campaign over a certain amount of months. This is going to be years. It has taken us years to get here, but this is just the first step. And combined with the other things that we're doing, I believe this is an important step in creating a more inclusive environment and appealing to a broad array and a very diverse array of artists to be included at the table.
Thank you. Thank you. So on my list, I have Hector, Gretchen, Maggie. Hector?
Yes, okay, well, my point is, I believe that the information on the task force on equity, that was part of the documents included in the initial work specifications or statements of, the title is Specifications Work Statement. So it's there, pretty well inclusive. In fact, I went through it and looked at all the attachments that were part of that work request. So they're there if you find it. That's very important. But also too, I think that part of the difficulty is the time. Yeah, I have to concede to you that I mean that you're saying there is a time factor, and this is probably one of the problems is that it seems so final that it's going to end November, and the question there is how far beyond this, what will be success at the end of November? And then how do we measure? Because a lot of the work you're going to do are simply stepping stones for work that has to continue. And to continue it only through November is short-sighted because a lot of this is going to happen next year. So the end results are going to be measured then in many cases. So that is one of the biggest issues that we have, that it doesn't move it forward. So you could continue that programming and that diversity that you're looking at. Thank you. That's all.
Anthony, do you want to respond to that?
I think as far as the time frame, I think that is a funding mechanism. We were given the budget, and the timeline was just kind of based on the budget. We're always happy to extend and continue to work further. But that's essentially
You'll work as long as you're being paid, right?
So it's that the on that part. As far as what success actually looks like, so we are measuring our metrics of impact, hits. The one thing we probably won't be around to measure that we would need to figure out how to measure is kind of, and we can. So there's a couple things we measure. One, the traditional analytics, and I don't want to necessarily bore you that clicks, likes, videos, how many people subscribe. They're the other things, news mentions, good mentions on social or in the news, those type of things we can measure. I would say the impact we wouldn't be around to measure particularly would be new applications and interest, because that would take place in the next spring.
Good. Great. Sorry,
And
Gretchen?
I don't have a answer on how to do that at this point. It is a conversation open to necessary to having.
Yep. Gretchen?
Hi,
And then Maggie?
thank you. Just to clarify, is the present contract up in November? Is that why we keep saying November?
No, I think the actual contract lasts 1 year. We were funding when we were working with the commission. Prior to this, we had to put a plan together, and the plan based on the actual money, we originally thought we had to spend everything by September 31st. By September 30th, I'm sorry. But they were like, they didn't. So November was based on the time frame and the parameters basically of the contract and the funding.
So the bottom line is right now your contract ends in November.
The
Yes?
plan
No?
technically ends in November. The money exhausts in November. I think technically the actual contract could be extended to February.
Okay, so that's why we keep saying November. I wanted to understand that. Also, I'm still back to, I guess, the point about choosing the 5 people with the selection criteria. Will we be able to see that criteria before it's actually posted?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, and I will make sure, and I will make sure that we get everything to you this week. And then the only thing, the criteria, we will, once approved, we'll need to translate. We will need to translate, so we'll need a couple days between approval and going live to get everything translated over, and to go from there.
Good. Thank you. Maggie?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I'm less concerned about the number of artists per se, but rather that they reflect the 5 essential core pillars of our strategic plan. So the artists become emblematic of the success we're having as an organization. And just a reminder, those are IDEA, as Juanice mentioned, pandemic recovery, community awareness and connectedness, district government alignment, and governance and organizational culture. So, when the Washington Post interviewed Reggie, he talked about elements of each of these as part of his vision for the organization. So what would be ideal and what would be a core metric, I would think, Anthony, is to make sure that the artists reflect some dimension of this. An artist that we provided pandemic recovery to, an artist who we embraced with a new vision for inclusion and equity. An artist that participated in a multi-agency alignment. So I think what's core, what we want to make sure is we're not just interviewing artists for the sake of artists, but rather that they reflect our core mission as an entity and as an agency. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because I think all the media we do should be reinforcing of that. And Andreen touched on this in her description, but I think we should be very intentional about those 5 core elements that we're doubling down on, because it's a huge shift for the agency. And Reggie's been very disciplined about talking about them in each of his touch points. So now we want to show them where the money is. We want to show that we've operationalized it. It wasn't just an idea. It was not just a vision, but we're actually operationalizing, and we're using the artist to demonstrate that.
Good. So if you all would indulge me, I'll now go to my list because I don't see any other hands raised, and I'm sure people want to say something afterwards. But before we run out of time, some of what I'll touch, you all have touched upon, so it'll be more of a summary. But my first question was around the duration of the contract, and I understand that technically the contract can run to February, but from a funding standpoint, it ends in November, which is fine. So I would like to see, and you may have it, but I'd like to see it again explicitly, the deliverables that we will see by November and the success measures that you will apply to, did we do what we wanted to do by November? And since we're not sure what happens post-November, but we know stuff needs to happen, if you could give us your list of what the next step should be, that either we do on our own, we do with you, whatever. But so what we get done by November is fine, but the things that need to happen after that, the phase 2, so the things that was in a phase 2, if you can just dot point those for us, that'll be helpful. The second was, I know that there are at least 3 critical inputs to your plan: our strategic plan, the task force recommendations, and the public arts plan. And I would like to add a 4th input, which would be inputs from the 6 committees. Because as Quanice talked about, that statement that's coming from the IDEA committee, we want to make sure, to the extent we have the resources, to put that in our PR plan, that it's in there. So I'm going to ask each of the committee chairs to provide you with the important things. And I know Hector's talked about things that they need from their committee. Everybody in their various committee meetings have talked about what they could use from this work. And I realize you can't put 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, but we'll give you the 10 pounds. And then you can help us prioritize down to what's doable within the 5 pounds. But so I want the strategic plan, the task force, the public arts plan, and our committee's plans to be reflected in your PR and marketing plan, and to do an explicit linkage to that, even if it's just check marks to say this action that you're doing is checking these parts of the task force or the strategic plan or the public arts plan or whatever. I want to make that explicit as much as possible. Third, there was a lot of conversations about choosing the artist and the artist table, and I agree. The process is important, and we need to understand the criteria you're going to use and all of that to make sure that makes sense. And I hear you by saying it's going to be inclusive and diverse, and I appreciate that. But Maggie beat me to the punch. There are these 5, as it ends up, there are these 5 pillars that we have in our plan. And if you're going to pick 5 artists, as best as you can, there should be 1 artist per category. Perhaps that's not possible, but I think we should try to do that if possible. For the exhibitions, I know that you're talking about us doing either an exhibition or some exhibitions in our space, and I think that's important. The help we also need is getting attendance to those. I've attended a couple of our sessions exhibitions, which are magnificent, but in my opinion, highly underattended. And so we need help in getting people there, both the numbers there and the diversity of the crowd there as well. So if you can help us with that, that's the real success of the exhibition, not just doing it, but making sure as many people as possible across the ecosystem of Washington, D.C. get to see it. Next, the notion of grantee spotlight and highlighting grantees each month. Again, how would those be chosen as opposed to the artists, the grantees are, and how many would we do, et cetera. And that really is a hot spot. I know that we've had challenges even in choosing which people would perform at each of our commission meetings. So perhaps Haran and her team could give you some counsel on how we sorted through that. But I'm very anxious to understand how we choose who we spotlight in the spirit of inclusiveness and fairness and equity. On the ads being run, I heard the long list of outlets. I would like just a minute to understand why those outlets were chosen. And back to, I think, a question Hector may have asked, are we covering the critical areas we want to reach the people that we want to reach? And how will we measure the effectiveness of that ads? Any ad campaign is predicated on how effective it's going to be. So what will be the metrics for measuring the effectiveness of those is important. And do we have a budget for that? Or are these all free media outlets? I'm just not sure. So I have that question as well. And another question on the ads. Well, I'll ask the question now here. Somebody made the point that some of our grantees and some people in our community still are not technology savvy. And so if all of our advertising is done electronic only, we're going to miss some people. So I'm hoping that we're going to get out into the community, actually physically go out into the community and have events out in the community. And if you go back to the task force recommendations, things like putting newsletters in churches and community groups and how, all of this sort of stuff we need to do. We need to use technology as best as we can. I think that's necessary, but not sufficient for the audience we're trying to address. So I'm hoping that our campaigns will go beyond just electronic media. And I'm hoping that we will really bolster the Art All Night program that we have, as well as the Mayor's Arts Award, which we hope to participate in again this year. I'm almost done. The biweekly check-ins, who's invited to that? I'd like for either all of us or some of us to be invited to that so that we can have that two-way conversation on a regular basis about what you're doing and what we're doing to make sure that we're prioritizing the right sort of way and capitalizing the right sort of way. Again, you can't get 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag. So I'm not saying that everything we're doing, you have to do in the PR and marketing campaign. We want to put it on the table and then have a conversation of, based on the resources available, what are the highest priority things to do? I think that is my list. That may be more than you can respond to.
No, I will try to explain as many as possible. First, on the advertising campaigns, no, these are paid. These are all paid ads. So the outlets.
What is our budget for that, though?
100. We're gonna
125.
Yes.
Sorry.
125. I read the budget.
And so at some point we have to ask the question: is that enough for what we're trying to do? Or I guess we have to prioritize what we're doing until we've hit the 125.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Anthony.
No. So that's where we're at. So for the outlets we've chosen so far, we went to some community or outlets with decent reach that target particularly minority communities. I mean, right now, it's been African American community or the Latino community has been where we're at now with PGC, LZO, KOS, a newspaper. We're also going to El Tiempo is one. I may not have mentioned, but it's another one we're doing. So we can, as far as that, we can dive in further. To get just more local outlets, or if there are places that we are missing. So please feel free to make any recommendations you may have as well. As far as that, we are also targeting. We can also, of course, online. We can target it as we need to be. For us, analytics, we are able to get the analytics for our social ads. We are able to get, how many people seen and saw our ads that go on the radio or in newspapers. There are some places we won't be able to really capture data. And so, again, maybe some of the community newsletters and such. But we'll get to those as much as possible. We will, again, we'll go through you to follow up on the council newsletters. We'll make sure that the ANCs all have, whatever the news is, whatever particular target that we want to put out for the month. The grantee spotlight, for right now, we've just been working with the commission, asking for recommendations. So for each month, we've just kind of asked, hey, based on this, I know in June, it was, it's Pride Month. Is there a grantee who's done some work? They're either LGBTQIA plus focus organization, or they are doing, a lot of work in that space and have activities going on. And that's how we arrived with DuPont Underground, particularly as the grantee spotlight for this month. For that, we've kind of asked the commission for recommendations on who to highlight. We haven't done any direct outreach to grantees ourselves. Unlike the artists, with the artist table, we'll actually do outreach and ask for people to apply.
So from the advertising standpoint, I don't want to complicate things or make it
Okay.
complex, but there is some free advertising I know we can get. I'm a very close friend of Kathy Hughes at TV One and
Okay.
Radio One. I'm a very close friend of Scott Mills at BET. I mean, so you should use the resources of this group to see where can we get public service announcement, free sort of stuff, and not spend money in that case, in those cases where we don't have to spend the money. But that's going to require us spending some time with you, and I will make the time to understand where you're planning to go and to think about where might we get access to free advertising.
Okay. In the bi-weekly meeting, I think we've been working with Jeff just on the invites for those. We're welcome. Again, that's one of those things where I think he's the contract admin, so we'll delay, default to him on that. But that is kind of just how we figured out who's going to be in the bi-weekly meeting from our team. Everyone that's on the plan, that you saw their name, that's key on the team, is in the bi-weekly meeting.
Okay, so Jeff, if you could just invite the executive committee and Cora and Carla to those, if not every bi-weekly, once a month or something. And if people can't call in, they can, but if they can and can be helpful, that'll be a way not to create a new meeting, not to extend an agenda, but just invite us in, because the sort of insight that we're offering here needs to happen more than just episodically.
Sure, but I mean, those will have to be noticed as public meetings if it's going to be a quorum of the executive committee present.
We probably can just make sure there's no more than 1 or 2,
Okay.
3 or whatever. It's
Okay.
unlikely you're going to get 7. I guess 8 is the issue, right? 9?
Since the executive committee is a public body itself, it's if there's 4 or more of y'all of the executive committee present, then that triggers a public meeting in and of itself.
Okay, so I will play executive secretary with the executive committee on who is available, and if there are too many people, we'll get somebody to step away and not be on it, et cetera. But
Okay.
I just like to have that opportunity to at least make us aware of when those calls are happening so that we can have these conversations in that context.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
In the updated list, as far as the updated plan, with the list of the deliverables tied back, we will get that to you. The next steps, that we wouldn't be able to define that necessarily at this point what needs to happen beyond November, because some things we can say an initial framework, But a lot of that will be driven by some of the feedback and some of the conversations we do have across these next couple months.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying the next steps now. I'm saying the
Okay.
next steps in November as you're finishing
Okay.
that work to provide the next steps.
Okay, yes. Okay, so yeah, we will have a final plan with recommendations and the next steps. So we will make sure that that is one of our deliverables as well, like a final report and recommendations.
Right.
So that we will make sure that that is included in that as well. And then we have to go back and review. I did, and I think before now we did review the task force. I just have to go back and make sure we actually read like the statement. But as far as the task force recommendations, we did review those in formulating the plan from the beginning because those were actually included in the either we got them from OCP or Jeff may have sent them, but I do know we did receive that. So we
Okay.
did.
I know one of the recommendations was around going out into the community, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't see going out into the community in your plan. That's why I asked the question, have you really looked at the task force recommendations at some level of detail?
Yes, we did review it. We can circle back on that to figure out the best way to get that done. Community events, and maybe it's just identifying and having a presence at community events. Or we'll circle back on that.
If I could interject just simply something for a moment, Mr. Chair.
I think Gretchen may have been
Oh,
next.
Gretchen, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
So Gretchen?
Oh, is my hand still up?
Oh, okay. Never
Got to
mind.
take
Your
it down.
hand's still- So Hector, you're on.
Yeah, well, for for smaller publications, such as El Sol or El Tiempo, one very important thing for us to get support from them on a PSA level is providing them rich content. You know, basically, what are the stories? What are the artists that we're helping? What artists, what does the commission do, and how does the community make themselves available? One has to create content, and they will follow. I know these people rather well, and they're incredibly supportive, but you know, if they don't have content, they're not going to move forward. And that should be part of the negotiation, obviously, with the advertising, that they support your PSA efforts, that you want to get out the message. And because an ad in itself placed in El Tiempo is going to be not as, how would you say, effective as a story written by them that you then support the publication by the ads or an advertising campaign. And this I know, you know, because I've worked with them in the past quite significantly. So content, it's got to be driven by content. And some of that storylines that you're going to use in particular, you know, for example, I know within the Latino community, well, how does that impact the Latino community? Who are benefiting for it? How do we get more information out to the community? And what does it mean? How does the community benefit through the commission and all the programs it supports? Those are the stories. And I think that any smaller, more community-based organizations or publications are going to feel that way too. They're going to need some content to run those stories to get the message across, but that has to be given to them and provided to them.
Let me build upon what you said, Hector. If I had my ruthers, I would not spend a penny of $125,000 on an ad. I would put it all into going out into the community, poster boards, newsletters, flyers, that's what, and then, you know, refreshments for the people at the event or something like that. I think that's what we really need to do as opposed to ads, and or to your point, getting those outlets to give us write us a story that doesn't cost anything other than our time in preparing, you know, the story and that sort of thing. So I am not inclined, having lived in that world a long time, I'm not inclined to do a lot of advertising spend, but rather to use that money for what I call real community engagement. My rathers, but I'll leave it up to professionals to recommend what they think is the best approach. So Gretchen, is your hand up again, or is it still up from before?
No, it's back up again. Thank you.
Okay.
I totally, you said what I was thinking, Reggie. Yeah, I can't see spending that kind of money. We just talked about it, so I support what you just said.
Right. I'd rather do 25 $5,000 events, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
And
And I
$5,000 can go very far out in the community with just punch and cookies and, you know, poster boards and that sort of thing. So that requires more arms and legs. I get it. but I would rather spend the consultant's time helping us with that than placing an ad.
Yeah, I was the one that said that many people that we're trying to reach don't have access to electronic media.
Right.
And that was very obvious at the event I attended this past weekend. So we've got to get around that. That's always been something we had to get around. So I'd like to see us actually do that, get around it and fix it.
So believe it or not, Anthony, we are trying to be helpful because we have all these ideas, but at the end of the day, you should funnel it all through, prioritize in the right sort of way, use your professional expertise to come back and say, okay, this would be highest impact. That was a nice idea, but it's low impact. It's not going to work, et cetera. And for us to work with you, I'm always reachable. I will try to make myself available for the biweekly touch points as much as possible. Perhaps others can as well. But this, as we said before, is very important to us. We've been waiting a long time to be able to do this. We're delighted to have you on board. But we really want to make this a huge success. So please take our comments in that spirit.
Yes, and we'll go back and we'll make some revisions and come back with an updated plan. I do note on the budget, media by budget, in shifting that some. I don't think that's a major problem, just the best way to figure it out. As far just ensuring in high visibility. There are a couple of ways we can do it. There's a community event. You can also figure out a way to put mailers up in the community. Well, not mailers. I think everyone's tired of mailers from the from the elections. If you live in the district,
Exactly.
but signage, but definitely more signage up as well. I think is a great idea. As well as even piggybacking on just like some meet and greets.
Yes. Yaron, I see your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say that one of the best ways to reach a lot of community members is to go to some of the ANC meetings and be physically present and talk. I mean, anyone's allowed to be put on any calendar of any ANC and just make a presentation.
And to be clear, Anthony, we're not saying that you all should go into that.
Right,
We
right.
should do it. But just you could organize and facilitate for us,
Right.
help us with our scripts, that sort of stuff. But this is for us to do. And my not so ulterior motive is to get the commissioners more involved in the communities that they sit in. So we should be going out there doing this. And if you put up an ad, that lets us off the hook. But if you say, no, you got a meeting in Ward 2, Reggie, on such and such a day, you need to be there, and here's your script, good luck, then that allows us to be more engaged.
No, so we did that with DDOT actually. So on now I mentioned this before, we worked with them on the circulator, the Ward 7 circulator extension. And essentially what we did was go to all the Ward 7 ANCs and the Ward 7 Civic Associations and ask, hey, DDOT they're trying to get feedback on extending the route. We have a meeting upcoming. Would it be okay for someone from DDOT get on the schedule to come out and speak? And that's essentially, most said yes. I mean, there were a couple no's, but most said yes. And that's essentially what we did. We had DDOT go around the ward, basically to all the meetings. I mean, this was the height of the pandemic. So at that point, they were all virtual. I think there is a mixture now of virtual and physical meetings being had by the ANC commissions. And those we were able to get them out to get feedback on that. That is, we did use that strategy for, particularly with the circulator project.
Good. Any other questions from commissioners? So Haran or Jeff or any of the members of the team, any questions, comments from you?
No, this sounds good. I'm glad we had this conversation. It aligns things and it sounds like we're up and running, so exciting.
Good. Jeff?
No comments from me. It sounds really good to me.
Good. Well, going once, going twice. Thank you. The time is now 3:17 p.m. There being no further business before this committee, the meeting is adjourned. And where's my? Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good job. Good job.
Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.